saw ourselves at once in a difficult and dangerous position. No sooner said than done, bareheaded as we were. We ran out at once in the gathering evening in the frosty, and I shall never forget how much I was cheered to see the yellow shine in doors and windows. Audrey, sorry. Mr. Talcott's gone.
Okay.
Front desk, in case anyone shows. Okay, take a look.
What about your job?
I had enough of that place.
Why? It's terrible in Paris. It's freaking swamps.
I get the hours I need to start nursing school, and I get paid, and I get to help somebody. My way.
They got gators in the swamps and guys missing teeth. Hello?
You have to let go. Ben, you're hurting me. Get near me. See this? I don't believe it. I don't.
The movie starts with Caroline, who had been working as a nurse at a hospital for a long time. One day, she sat next to a dying patient and read a book to him, just like he asked. As soon as she finished the last page, he passed away. After his body was taken to the morgue, his things were packed in case any family members came to collect them. But in the end, no one came, not even one person. When Caroline was about to throw his belongings away, she noticed that other patients' things had also been thrown straight into the trash, and that's when it really hit her. So many people had stopped caring about others. Even the hospital treated death like it was just another task. There was no emotion anymore. Everything felt like cold, routine business. So Caroline made a decision. She quit her job. She decided to become a private nurse after seeing a newspaper ad that offered a very high salary. That night, she met her friend Jill and told her she had resigned and was interested in the job. When Jill saw that the job was in Terrebonne Parish, she warned Caroline that the area was full of creepy swamps, but Caroline didn't see it as a problem. To her, it was a chance to truly care for someone in her own way, and the money could help pay for nursing school.
I get the hours I need to start nursing school, and I get paid, and I get to help somebody. My way.
They got gators in the swamps and guys missing teeth.
So she called the number, and just like that, her journey began. The next morning, Caroline drove out to Terrebonne Parish for an interview. The drive wasn't too bad, but just like Jill had warned, the area was full of swamps. Everywhere you looked, after turning down a narrow road lined with massive old trees that seemed to go on forever. She finally arrived at the house. It was an old place that looked like it had been standing there since the beginning of time. The house belonged to an elderly couple named Ben and Violet. The person who had answered Caroline's call was Luke, the lawyer handling the couple's will and helping them find a nurse. Luke explained that Caroline would be needed to care for Ben, who had become paralyzed and had trouble speaking after suffering a stroke in the attic about a month earlier. According to the doctors, Ben probably only had about a month left to live. Violet, on the other hand, clearly did not like Caroline. Not even a little bit. And even more strangely, she told Caroline flat out that she would never be able to understand the house. That was enough to almost make Caroline walk right back out the door. But Luke stepped in and calmed things down. He explained that Ben truly needed help, that the last nurse had already quit, and that Violet had already rejected 4 other applicants before Caroline showed up. So Caroline asked Luke what Violet had meant by that comment about the house. Luke had no idea either. As far as he was concerned, he was only there as their lawyer still. He promised he'd try to convince Violet to give Caroline a shot. Eventually, Violet agreed, and the very next day, Caroline packed her things with Jill's help and headed to the house. On the way there, she stopped at a gas station because she was running low on fuel. But the moment she pulled in, something felt off. There was a line of red dust scattered across the front of the store entrance, and the place felt completely deserted. She called out a few times, nothing.
Hello?
Somebody back there?
And then out of nowhere, a blind woman appeared and nearly gave her a heart attack. When Caroline finally arrived at Violet's house, she started settling into her room, putting her things away, including a photo of her with her father, but something caught her attention pretty quickly. The mirror in her bathroom had been removed, and not just there, every single mirror in the entire house was gone. Every last one, since she couldn't find Violet anywhere. Caroline decided to check on Ben, who was lying in bed. As she walked closer, he suddenly reached out and grabbed her hand so tightly it hurt.
You have to let go. Ben, you're hurting me.
A moment later, Violet appeared and started walking Caroline through her duties. Crushed medication every morning at 9 and every evening at 7, bathing him and changing his sheets regularly. Simple enough on paper. Curious, Caroline asked how long they'd been living in the house. Violet explained they had moved in around 1962. The house had originally belonged to a brother and sister named Martin and Grace, who had inherited it from their parents. Because of money trouble, they were eventually forced to sell it. Violet had kept their photographs as a form of respect. As Caroline looked through the photos, one slipped out. It showed Martin and Grace with their parents, Papa Justify and Mama Cecile. And what immediately stood out was that their skin tones were completely different. Caroline couldn't help but wonder if the children had been adopted. Violet then explained that the house had 30 rooms in total, and every single one could be opened with one key known as the skeleton key. That included the attic where Ben kept his antique collection. She handed the key over, and that was where everything started to get interesting in a not-so-great way. Caroline then asked about the missing mirrors. Violet simply said that she and Ben had no use for them anymore. They were old and had no interest in staring at their aging faces. Fair enough, honestly. The conversation continued in a more casual tone after that. Despite her age, Violet was a heavy smoker. Caroline, on the other hand, opened up about her own past, how her mother had left when she was a child, and how her father had passed away just the year before. The next morning, Caroline officially got to work. She bathed Ben, helped him get dressed, and brought him downstairs using a lift so he could relax outside while Violet tended to her garden. At one point, Violet asked Caroline to grab some flower seeds from the attic. So up she went with the skeleton key, but as she walked further into the attic, she heard a strange noise coming from the far end of the room. When she went to check, she found a hidden door tucked behind a stack of old items, and whatever was on the other side sounded like it was trying to force its way through. She tried the key, but it wouldn't work. And just as she stood there confused, Violet suddenly appeared behind her, out of nowhere, scaring her half to death. Caroline asked why the key didn't work on that door. Violet explained that the room had been sealed ever since they moved in and that nobody really knew what was inside. Not exactly the kind of answer that helps you sleep at night. That night, Caroline woke up suddenly after hearing something shatter upstairs. She rushed to Ben's room and found his bed empty. He had somehow climbed out through the window and was crawling across the roof before he fell off. Panicked, Caroline called out for Violet. She was told to grab the wheelchair, but as she reached for it, something caught her eye. Written on Ben's blanket were the words, "Help me." Without thinking, she quickly hid it. And when they finally got Ben back inside, he locked eyes with Caroline in a way that felt desperate and heavy, like he was silently begging her to do something. The next morning, Luke came by the house. Caroline told him about the night before and planned to show him the blanket with the message. But when she went to get it, the writing had completely vanished. She started to doubt herself. Maybe she had imagined it. As they kept talking, Caroline opened up a bit more about her past. She shared how she had dropped out of college after getting caught up with her band friends and barely being home. Her father had been furious, feeling like her life had no direction at all. Their arguments eventually pushed her to leave, and not long after, she got the news that he had passed away. That regret never left her. It was actually a big part of why she chose nursing. She hadn't been there for him when he needed her most, and she wasn't going to let that happen again later that afternoon. While Violet was busy sweeping outside, Caroline quietly slipped back into the attic. She was still suspicious about that locked door. This time she carefully worked at the keyhole and found something blocking it from the inside. After clearing it out and trying the skeleton key again, the door finally opened. What she found inside was deeply unsettling. Twisted roots, strands of hair, a monkey skull, large stitched dolls, a pile of rings. As she kept searching, she came across a book filled with photographs of Justify, Cecile, Martin, and Grace. And then she found something that made her stomach drop. Inside the book were written protection spells, along with an audio recording labeled as a sacrifice ritual by Papa Justify. It was very clear that everything in that room was connected to some kind of dark magic, and not the fun Halloween kind. Meanwhile, Violet had noticed Caroline was nowhere to be found and headed up to the attic. Caroline quickly hid, grabbing the recording on her way out. After Violet left, she made one more discovery. All the missing mirrors from around the house had been stored right there in that room. Since the town was only about an hour away, Caroline decided to drive out that night to see Jill. She played the recording for her. It was Justify, pleading to be freed from a cursed house, begging to be released from darkness, sorrow, and a terrible curse. After listening to it, They went out for a bit to decompress because honestly, who wouldn't need that? While they were out, Caroline told Jill everything. The hidden room, the strange objects, all of it. Jill said it sounded like hoodoo, a form of traditional folk magic rooted in African, European, and Native American practices. Unlike voodoo, which is tied to religion, hoodoo is purely about the practice of magic itself. According to what Jill had heard, it could be seriously dangerous because it worked on the mind. But here was the catch. It wouldn't work on someone who didn't believe in it. Jill also mentioned that her Aunt Nola was a firm believer in hoodoo and often visited a certain laundromat, though nobody really knew what she was doing there. Sounds completely normal, right? That same night, Caroline returned to Violet's house. After tucking Ben into bed, she placed a mirror in his room. The next morning, Violet saw it and immediately confronted Caroline for crossing a line.
I told you about the mirrors.
But this time, Caroline held her ground. She told Violet straight up that she had already seen what was hidden in the attic and she wanted the truth about the house. Otherwise, she was walking out. With no other option, Violet finally talked about 90 years ago. The house had belonged to a wealthy banker named Thorpe, who lived there with his family and 2 servants, Papa Justify and Mama Cecile. Thorpe was known to be cruel, building his fortune by taking advantage of the poor. What his family never knew was that Justify and Cecile were practitioners of hoodoo. The attic had been their room, and also the place where they secretly performed rituals against those they saw as evil. According to local stories, the Thorpe family treated them so harshly that everything eventually came to a head one night during a party filled with powerful and wealthy guests. That evening, Thorpe discovered that his children, Martin and Grace, had gone missing. The search led everyone straight to the attic, where the children were found with Justify and Cecile apparently learning hoodoo rituals. The crowd's reaction was immediate and ugly. In the chaos, Justify's ring slipped off his finger. They were dragged away by the mob, and what happened to them left a permanent mark on the town. After that, Thorpe's bank collapsed, overwhelmed by despair. His life came to a tragic end, and so did his wife's. The townspeople believed it was the revenge of Justify and Cecile's spirits coming back to collect what was owed. Martin and Grace continued living in the house until 1962, when they eventually sold it to Violet and Ben, but they never explained why the attic room was locked or why mirrors were forbidden throughout the house. Violet believed that mirrors allowed the spirits of Justify and Cecile to be seen. She also kept red brick dust in the house because she had read it could offer protection against danger. Even after hearing all of that, Caroline still wasn't convinced. She didn't believe in ghosts or magic, but later, while giving Ben a bath, some soapy water got into her eyes. As she wiped it away, she caught a quick glance of Ben in a small mirror nearby. His reaction was impossible to ignore. He was staring at that mirror with an intensity that was hard to explain, so she held it up in front of him, just to test Violet's claim. The second he saw his reflection, he went completely hysterical. After that, Caroline drove into town to visit Jill's Aunt Nola at the laundromat. Inside, she found that the place was actually a hidden space where Nola treated people using unusual rituals. The room was filled with strange objects, and there was red brick dust placed right at the entrance. Caroline didn't hold back. She made it very clear that she didn't believe in magic, not even a little in her view. It all came down to suggestion. If someone believed they could be healed, they might heal. If someone believed they were cursed, they would suffer because of that belief alone. She even mentioned someone she knew who had become paralyzed after believing they had been affected by magic, clearly referring to Ben. In the end, Nola gave Caroline several items and a method she could use to figure out whether someone was truly under the influence of magic. She also shared a way that could potentially help Ben recover, and Caroline started to think if Ben truly believed he had been cursed through magic, then maybe the only thing that could actually save him was magic as well. As soon as she got back to the house, Caroline set everything up exactly as Nola had instructed. She placed a bowl of water, lit a cross-shaped candle, added the herbs and oil she'd been given, and then moved carefully around Ben, fanning him with a crow feather while sprinkling water and reciting a chant to cleanse and bless the space around him. And then something completely unexpected happened. Ben spoke. He only had enough strength to say one thing. He begged to be taken out of the house. He never got to explain what had really been going on or what had happened to him in the attic, because Violet walked in before he could say another word. Caroline quickly hid everything and made it look like she'd just been telling him a little story that night. Caroline couldn't sleep. The faces and voices from the recording of Justify and Cecile kept replaying in her head. When she finally woke from a nightmare, she glanced toward the mirror and thought she saw a figure stepping out of her room. Not exactly the kind of thing you brush off and go back to sleep after by morning. She had made up her mind to leave the house no longer felt safe. But then she saw Ben sitting quietly on the porch, lost in his own thoughts, and something stopped her completely. He reminded her of her father, and she just couldn't walk away. Determined to find answers, Caroline took photos of everything she had found in the attic and brought them to Luke. She also asked about the previous nurse. Luke didn't know much, so he offered to take her to meet the woman in person. The former nurse, Haley was now working at a nursing home. After hearing Caroline's story, Haley explained that she had left because the house carried a presence that just felt deeply wrong. She also revealed that Martin and Grace, the former owners, had both died of strokes not long after selling the house to Violet and Ben. In her mind, that was no coincidence. She believed they must have discovered something terrifying inside the house and that Ben's condition might be connected to that same thing. Before they parted ways, Haley had one final warning for Caroline.
I suggest you leave that house before you do.
On the way back, Caroline asked Luke to stop at the gas station she had visited before. She had been thinking about that red brick dust, and it made her realize the people there also believed in hoodoo. From there, she went to the house behind the station and once again found the same red dust at the entrance. Inside, she met the blind woman again. This time, Caroline asked about the recording, the one labeled as a sacrifice ritual. The woman explained that it was the most powerful form of hoodoo Papa Justify had ever discovered. It was believed to have the ability to protect someone from death, but only by drawing life from another person. However, Justify and Cecile were said to have been taken before they ever got the chance to use it. And right there, everything clicked for Caroline. She became convinced that Violet was behind everything that was happening to Ben. She believed Violet had mastered the ritual and was planning to use Ben to extend her own life. That night, Caroline decided she had to act. But when she got back to the house, the recording was gone from her suitcase. Someone had taken it. She needed protection fast. She went to the storage room, grabbed the red brick dust, and spread it across the entrance of her bedroom before covering it with a carpet. Then she set a trap. She gave Violet a reason to enter her room, pretending there was a leak in the ceiling, just to see whether Violet would be affected by the red dust. And even though it was hidden under the carpet, Violet somehow sensed it was there, like she had a sixth sense for it that night. Caroline had already prepared sugar cubes mixed with a mild sedative, but things didn't go as planned because Violet wanted plain tea instead of anything with sugar. Trying to keep things calm, Caroline insisted that she didn't believe Ben had been cursed in the attic. She had gone up there plenty of times herself, and nothing had ever happened to her. Violet stayed completely calm and said something unsettling. Caroline hadn't been affected simply because she didn't believe in hoodoo. Not long after, the power went out. As Violet stepped away to find candles, Caroline quickly poured the sedative into her tea. This time, it worked. Violet drank it and collapsed. As she fell, she was still clutching a torn piece of a protection spell in her hand, as if she was trying to stop Ben from being taken out of the house. Caroline grabbed the paper and rushed to find the recording. She eventually found it in Violet's bedroom. Knowing she didn't have much time, she hurried to carry Ben out to her car, but when she reached the gate, it was locked. She tried forcing it open over and over, but it wouldn't move. She tried to find another way out, but the car slipped and got stuck. And to make things worse, Violet woke up, now armed with a shotgun. Violet began hunting for her through the property. To buy some time, Caroline hid Ben inside the storage room and then escaped using a small boat at the lake behind the house. After getting clear, she went straight to Luke's apartment and told him everything. How Violet had tried to harm her and how Ben desperately needed help. But just a few moments later, Violet called Luke and completely twisted the story, making it sound like Caroline was the dangerous one. While Luke was still on the phone, something on his desk caught Caroline's eye. Multiple photos of her and, in his drawer, Papa Justify's ring. And the skeleton key. Before she could process any of that, Luke appeared and attacked her. That was when the truth came out. Luke had been working with Violet the whole time. All of it. Every step had been a trap for her. Caroline was captured and taken back to the house, tied up and completely helpless, and now it all made sense. She was the real target, not Ben. Violet's plan had been to use Caroline for the ritual all along, and Luke wasn't just helping. He was a follower of the same dark practice. Violet told Luke that the ritual couldn't begin until Ben was found, and Caroline, thinking quickly, told them exactly where she had hidden him in the storage room. It was a move designed to separate them and give herself a window to escape back to her room where the red brick dust still lined the entrance. She needed a moment to regroup and figure out a way to fight back. As Violet went for Ben, Caroline made her move. She climbed up the garden fence to the second floor, scattered red dust to block Luke's path, and rushed upstairs. But when she got there, Violet was already waiting. A struggle broke out. In the end, Caroline managed to bring Violet down. She grabbed the house phone and called for emergency help, police, and an ambulance, and then called Jill to tell her she was in serious trouble. But Violet made her way back upstairs using the lift and cut the phone line before anyone could respond. With no way to call for help, Caroline ran up to the attic. What she found there stopped her cold. The room had already been prepared for a ritual. Candles everywhere. Mirrors arranged all around. Caroline quickly understood that she was about to be used as a sacrifice. She remembered the torn piece of the protection spell in her pocket. Using sulfur chalk, strands of her own hair, and her blood, she drew the symbol on the floor and stepped inside it. Moments later, Violet crawled into the attic toward her. But Caroline wasn't afraid this time. She believed the symbol was protecting her. Then Violet smiled. And that smile said everything. The spell wasn't designed to keep danger out. It was designed to trap whatever was inside the circle. And now that Caroline was standing in it, the ritual could finally begin. Everything that had happened since Caroline first arrived at that house had been carefully planned from the start. Every strange detail, every mystery, every unsettling moment, it had all been designed to slowly push Caroline toward believing in hoodoo, because without belief, the ritual simply wouldn't work. And now she had crossed that line. Luke started playing the recording of Justify reciting the sacrifice ritual. Violet placed a large mirror directly in front of Caroline. In its reflection, different faces began to appear, until the glass finally cracked. When Caroline came to, something was different. She reached for a cigarette just like Violet always did. And then something even more disturbing became clear. She and Luke were no longer using their own names. They were calling each other Justify and Cecile. The truth hit like a truck. The ritual wasn't about moving a soul to somewhere else. It was about swapping them entirely. 90 years ago, Justify and Cecile had mastered hoodoo. Tired of being abused and treated as less than human, they used the ritual to exchange their souls with Martin and Grace while the children were still young. That meant the ones who were taken by the mob and burned that night were not Justify and Cecile at all. Justify had taken over Luke's body, Cecile had taken Caroline's. The perfect cover, new faces, new lives, and a secret that would stay buried as long as no one believed in hoodoo enough to look trapped inside Violet's old body. The real Caroline could only beg in silence to be set free. She couldn't speak. She couldn't move. She was just fully aware of the nightmare she was now living in. The next morning, the police and an ambulance came to the house. Luke and the real Caroline, now stuck inside old bodies, were taken away. Both of them looked like stroke patients. Meanwhile, Justify and Cecile, now in new bodies, acted calm and confused, like they had no idea what had happened. Not long after Jill arrived, she was very worried after that phone call. The person standing in front of her looked like Caroline, talked like Caroline, smiled like Caroline, and told her everything was okay. But the real Caroline, trapped inside Violet's body, could do nothing but watch. She couldn't speak. She couldn't warn her. She just watched her best friend walk away, completely fooled in the end. Justify explained that Ben and Violet had grown to like Caroline and decided to leave the house to her. And as Luke and the real Caroline were put into the ambulance and driven away, all they could do was look at each other through the windows in silence, knowing exactly what had happened and knowing there was nothing they could do. So what's the lesson? Never take a high-paying job in a creepy swamp house with no mirrors, because you might lose more than just your money. You could lose your whole body. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe. See you in the next video.